Welcome to Code Black. If you're watching this, you're probably either a fellow traveler of the midnight oil or someone who finds comfort in knowing that as bad as your shift is, it's not dissolving from the inside out bad. Grab your lukewarm coffee, take a seat, and ignore the ringing in your ears. We've spent months looking into the darkest corners of human labor, from the mud-caked alleys of the 14th century to the sterile, silent horror of modern-day facilities. We aren't talking about difficult jobs. We aren't talking about annoying bosses. We're talking about the vocations that leave a permanent stain on your soul and a permanent scent on your skin. These are the jobs where Code Black isn't just an emergency, it's the Tuesday morning meeting. I've ranked these based on physical trauma, psychological decay, and the sheer why on earth would you do this factor. This is the definitive ranking of the 10 most disturbing jobs in human history. Don't blink, you'll miss the warning signs. The Gong Farmer. Let's start at the bottom. Literally. Imagine it's 15th century London. There are no sewers, no flushing toilets, just holes in the ground called gongs or privies. When those holes got full, and believe me, with the diet of the Middle Ages, they got full fast, someone had to clean them. Enter the Gong Farmer. This wasn't a day job. By law, these guys could only work between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. Why? Because the smell was considered a public health hazard that could literally kill a passerby. It was the original graveyard shift. You spent 8 hours waist deep in night soil. That's a fancy term for human waste, shoveling liquid misery into buckets. The fumes? Pure ammonia and methane. High concentrations could cause instant asphyxiation, basically a medieval gas attack. You were an outcast. You lived in designated areas because no one wanted to breathe the same air as you. You were paid well, sure, but you spent that money on enough ale to forget that your fingernails would never be clean again. It's the baseline of our list, because while it's physically repulsive, it's the purest form of survival. You're a human sponge for the city's filth. Just hope you don't have an open cut on your leg, or you're meeting the Reaper before dawn. The leech collector. Moving from the waste to the wetlands. In the 19th century, doctors were obsessed with bloodletting. To them, a leech was a miracle cure-all. But leeches don't just volunteer for medical duty. They need to be caught. And how do you catch a blood-sucking parasite that hides in the murky, freezing mud of a swamp? You use bait. But you don't use worms. You use yourself. Leech collectors, mostly poor women or the elderly, would walk into bogs with their legs bare. They'd wade around until they felt the rhythmic, sickening squeeze of a dozen leeches attaching to their calves and thighs. You had to let them drink. If you pulled them off too early, their jaws would stay in your skin, causing infections that lead straight to amputation. You'd walk out of the marsh with your legs covered in biological hitchhikers, bleeding from dozens of triangular wounds that wouldn't stop oozing because of the harudin, the anticoagulant the leeches inject into you. Over time, these workers suffered from chronic anemia, looking as pale and ghostly as the corpses they'd eventually become. It's disturbing because it turns the human body into a vending machine for parasites. You aren't just a worker, you're a meal. The sin eater. This one hits the psychological scale. In the 18th and 19th centuries, especially in Wales and the Appalachians, people were terrified of dying with unconfessed sins. If you died unclean, you were going straight to the basement. So, the village would hire a sin eater. This was a person, usually the most wretched, poverty-stricken individual available, who would come to the funeral. A piece of bread and a bowl of ale would be placed on the chest of the corpse. The sin eater would then eat the bread and drink the ale, and in doing so, they would symbolically absorb all the sins of the deceased. You weren't just eating food. You were consuming someone else's murder, theft, and adultery. You were a spiritual trash can. The disturbing part? Once the ritual was done, the sin eater was considered unclean by the community. They were often shunned, chased away with sticks, or forbidden from entering churches. You were saving everyone's soul while damning your own, for a crust of bread and a few coins. It's a job that requires you to carry the weight of 1,000 dead men's regrets. Talk about a heavy workload. No amount of caffeine helps when your job description includes eternal damnation.
The Resurrectionist. Before we had those plastic models in biology class, medical students needed the real thing. But in the early 1800s, getting a legal cadaver was nearly impossible. Demand was high, supply was low, and that's where the Resurrectionists came in. These weren't doctors, they were professional grave robbers. Your shift started at midnight. You had to find a fresh grave, nothing older than a few days, because once the decomp sets in, the professors won't pay. You dig a small hole at the head of the grave, smash the coffin lid, and use a hook to drag the body out by its hair or neck. You'd strip the clothes, because stealing clothes was a felony, but stealing a body was just a misdemeanor. Clever, right? You're hauling a 160-pound bag of dead weight through the dark, avoiding the cemetery guns and spring traps families set to stop people like you. The smell of a shallow grave is something that never leaves your sinuses. It's the smell of code black before the sirens even start. You were hated by the living and feared by the dying. It's a job where your best coworkers are silent and your boss only cares if the product is still cold to the touch.
The matchstick maker. Welcome to the Industrial Revolution, where your job could literally melt your face off. In the 19th century, thousands of young women worked in match factories. The secret ingredient for those easy strike matches? White phosphorus. It was cheap, effective, and incredibly toxic. If you spent 12 hours a day breathing in phosphorus fumes, you developed something called Phossy jaw. It started with a toothache. Then your gums would swell. Then abscesses would form, leaking foul-smelling pus. Eventually, your jawbone would literally begin to rot away inside your face. In the dark, the infected bone would actually glow a ghostly green-white color. If you didn't have your entire jaw surgically removed, the infection would spread to your brain and kill you. The owners of these factories knew the risks, but hey, profit margins, right? They'd tell the girls to wash their hands, but the fumes were everywhere. This is the definition of a toxic workplace. Imagine looking in the mirror and seeing your own bone glowing because your job is eating you alive. It makes your 12-hour nursing shift in a crowded ER look like a spa day.
The rat catcher. When the Black Death is knocking on the door, someone has to answer. In medieval and Victorian times, rats weren't just pests, they were biological bombs. The rat catcher was the frontline defense. You didn't have high-tech traps or poison. You had your hands, a bag, and maybe a very brave terrier. You spent your days in the sewers and the crawl spaces of the slums, catching rats by the dozen. Every bite was a roll of the dice. Would you get the bubonic plague, rat bite fever, or just a nasty infection? You were constantly covered in fleas, the real carriers of the plague, and you'd bring them home to your family. But the most disturbing part was the Rat King phenomenon, when dozens of rats get their tails knotted together in a mass of fur and filth. Breaking that up is a special kind of hell. It's a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek, where the prize is an agonizing death and a one-way ticket to a mass grave. You were the hero nobody wanted to touch.
The forensic pathologist. Now we're moving into the modern era. This is the professional who speaks for those who can no longer scream. Being a forensic pathologist isn't like CSI. There are no neon lights or cool soundtracks. It's a cold room, the hum of a refrigerator, and the heavy, metallic smell of blood mixed with bowel contents. Your job is to take a human being, someone who was laughing at dinner 2 hours ago, and turn them into a series of data points. You use a rib spreader to open the chest, a bone saw to open the skull, and you weigh the organs like you're at a grocery store. But the physical part isn't the most disturbing. It's the stories. You see the worst of humanity, the abuse cases, the John Does who died alone and weren't found for 3 weeks, the children who never had a chance. You become a master of compartmentalization, a fancy word for burying your feelings so deep they'll need their own autopsy. You're the one who has to find the bullet, identify the poison, and sign the death certificate. It's a job where you're surrounded by people, but you've never been more alone.
The crime scene cleaner. After the police leave, after the body is taken by the pathologist, there is still a mess, a big one. And it's not just blood. When a body sits in a Chicago apartment for 2 weeks in July, it undergoes liquefaction. That's the technical term for the body turning into a soup of bacteria and enzymes. It soaks into the floorboards, the drywall, the furniture. The crime scene cleaner is the person who has to fix it. You go in wearing a level 4 biohazard suit, which is basically a giant plastic bag that turns your sweat into a personal sauna. You're scraping matter off the ceiling. You're using industrial-grade ozone machines to kill the scent of decay, a scent that can penetrate through bricks. You see the snapshot of the moment someone's life ended. You see the half-eaten meal, the unread book, the family photos on the wall, all while you're scrubbing their remains out of the carpet. It's a job that forces you to confront the utter fragility of existence. One day you're here, the next, you're a biohazard remediation project. If you don't have a pitch-black sense of humor in this job, you won't last an hour.
The modern executioner. This is the most psychologically taxing job on the list. In the United States, we have the death penalty, and someone has to carry it out. It's not one person, it's a team. There's the person who ties the straps, the person who inserts the IV, and the person who pushes the button or turns the key. But for the guy in charge, it's a weight that never leaves. You have to be a professional. You have to treat the condemned person with dignity while you're preparing to end their life. You have to follow the protocol to the letter. The last meal, the final walk, the check of the heart rate. If something goes wrong, a blown vein, a reaction to the drugs, you're the one who has to witness the agony. It's a job that demands you kill without emotion, but the human brain isn't wired for that. Most executioners suffer from severe PTSD, depression, and a sense of moral injury that no paycheck can fix. You're the hand of the law, but your hand is the one that stays stained. It's the ultimate code black, a planned, sterile, and legal termination of a soul.
The saturation diver. Here we are. Number 1. If you have claustrophobia, stop breathing now. Saturation diving is the most dangerous, disturbing, and physically demanding job in existence. These divers work on oil rigs and pipelines at depths of 500 to 1,000 feet. At those depths, the pressure is so intense it would crush a normal human like a soda can. To survive, you don't just dive. You live in a pressurized chamber for up to 28 days. You breathe a mixture of helium and oxygen that makes your voice sound like Mickey Mouse, but there's nothing funny about it. The helium strips away your body heat, so you're always freezing. You eat, sleep, and use the bathroom in a tiny tin can with 3 other guys. But here's the kicker. Your blood is literally saturated with gas. If the pressure in that chamber drops even a fraction, the gas in your blood will turn into bubbles. It's called the bends, but at these pressures, it's more like an internal explosion. Remember the Byford dolphin incident? In 1983, a dive bell decompression accident caused a diver's body to literally fragment. His internal organs were ejected through his chest. That is the risk every single second of every single day. You are living in a tomb, 600 feet underwater, knowing that one loose bolt or one human error will turn you into a red mist. It is the peak of human stress, the ultimate test of the nervous system, and the most disturbing way to earn a living. You aren't just working a shift. You're betting your life on the integrity of a metal wall.
So there you have it. 10 reasons why your boss isn't actually that bad, and why that extra shot of espresso is a luxury, not a necessity. History is built on the backs of people who did the jobs nobody else would touch. They cleaned the waste, they caught the parasites, they faced the rot, and they lived in the pressure cookers of the deep. They survived the graveyard shift so we could have the world we live in today. Next time you see a code black alert or feel like your job is a dead end, just remember, at least your jaw isn't glowing in the dark. This is code black. Stay awake, stay cynical, and for God's sake, get some sleep. I'll see you on